Hi knitting friends. It has been a month. I have a lot to share with you this episode, so I'm glad you're here and let's just get right into it. My name is Anna and this is my knitting channel where I talk about my knitting projects and my process. I also design knitwear and sell it independently and sometimes try to get it published. So it's been a little while since my last episode and a lot has happened, so some of that will be shared at the end. It's not really knitting related, but I also have some knitting to show, so let's get going. So for finished objects this time, I finished this hat. This is a gift for a friend's husband who made 52 birdhouses for mountain bluebirds near my home. I banned bluebirds with a license and monitor and maintain these birdhouses. So as a thank you for that act of kindness, I made him this hat. So it is made from Woolfolk Far, which is 100% wool, but it's plied in a chain construction. It's super soft and fits really well, just a beanie style. It's not super tight, it should fit a man's head. And this hat took only one 50-gram ball of Woolfolk, so it was only $30, and I have another ball left over which I will make my husband the same kind of hat. I just need to write down the final stitch count and what needles I used so that I can remember that for when I cast it on. So I used 3.5mm needles. This yarn calls for 4 to 5. That's pretty typical for me. I'm a very loose knitter, so I usually go down quite a few sizes. I actually usually use 3.5mm for a lot of different yarn weights. So this is the Musselburgh hat by Ysolda Teague. However, the Musselburgh is stockinette, and I did this one in 1x1 ribbing. So you just have to be aware along your lines of increase to maintain that ribbing pattern. So you'll have some rows where you'll have 3 knit stitches in a row in between your 1x1 ribbing, and then the next round it will resolve itself and be 1x1 ribbing all the way around. And then you also need to stop on a increase round, which will give you the stitch count you need to maintain the ribbing. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think it's a great gift knit. It was fairly quick in this yarn, which is a little bit of a thicker weight, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Now that I've shown it to you, I can give it to him. Oh, one more thing. So I followed the instructions, except that the Musselburgh hat continues as a tube all the way along, and then you decrease again so that you can fold it inside itself, and you would actually get a 4. If you did a brimmed hat, you would get 4 layers of fabric around your brim. So I just wanted this one layer of fabric, so I just did it to length, the length I wanted, and then I bound off using the Italian sewn bind off, which is one of my favorites. I find it easy to memorize and it looks neat after you block it, and it's really stretchy. So it's kind of like the tubular bind off, except that you don't have to put stitches on 2 needles, and you also don't do rounds of slip stitches before the bind off. You just go right into the bind off. I do a couple rounds of ribbing with one size smaller needle, so 0.5 millimeter smaller than my main body, and that helps to tighten up that bind off so it doesn't flare out and just looks like the hat just ends. I finished another project. This will be called the Pure Tee, and it is a dropped shoulder design with simple garter edging everywhere. So it has some garter bumps and then a rolled edge here along the neckline. So this one is made in Sandnes Garn Line, which is a linen viscose. I don't have the yarn label, but it's a mixture of a few different kinds of fibers, plant fibers in there. And it makes a really nice wearable, sorry for the wrinkles, piece. And it's a cropped design, so good for high-waisted. I'm sorry about the wrinkles. I didn't realize it was so wrinkled. I had it folded up in my closet so that I don't, actually not my closet, but my yarn cupboard, so that I wasn't tempted to wear it too much before it becomes a pattern. Yeah, it's a crop design, so you can wear it over high-waisted bottoms and over dresses. So I used 5 balls for this. So at my local yarn store, Statement Junkie, they sell this yarn at $8 a ball. So that was only $40 for this top, which is, as far as hand knitting goes, is a pretty good deal. And it is at a gauge of 20 stitches per inch. I used 3.5 millimeter needles again. It is constructed top down in the same way as this sweater that I'm wearing, which is the Gardy Cardi. And you increase at 4 different points along the shoulders while increasing the neck at the same point. So all of this to the sleeve split is done as one piece, and then you work the front and the back separately, then work in the round to the hemline, and then you go back and pick up stitches for the collar and the armholes. It's not really a sleeve, it's just an edging there. And so that means it's a dropped shoulder design, but there are no seams. You don't have to seam the shoulder line at the end. You just weave in your ends and you're done. It's also really easy to try on this way because you have your shoulder width done all together. You don't have to seam your shoulders in order to try it on. You can just try on your piece and see if it overhangs as much as you like on the arms. So I have written up that pattern, and I've sent it to my tech editor. She sent it back. I haven't had time to review her edits, but as soon as her and I have got that first draft finalized, then I will call for test knitters for this design. Yeah, so it's a pretty basic design. There's nothing too special about it. No strange techniques you need to learn, but if you knit this pattern, you will need to just follow the pattern because yeah, it might not be very intuitive what is happening as you're doing it, and you probably never worked a sweater this way. So if you follow the pattern, then you'll be golden. So I am working on another Musselburgh hat as a background project, so I just always have one of these on the go, and then when I bind off something and you have those knitting moments where you have nothing left to knit, then I can just pick this up and work on it. So it is done the length I need, and now I need to just decrease for the end there. But I need to weave in the ends. I always forget until I've already done the decreases that I need to weave the ends in on the inside, which is problematic when you are doing one with stripes and you have a whole bunch of ends. So I just need to weave that end in, and then I can do the decreases, and then that will be blocked and put in my gift knit stash. I have also cast on the start of a new design, so it's curling a little bit here, but this will be the Kenosee tee. The Kenosee tank is one of my designs. The other part of this is not in here. It must be stuffed in the couch or something, but there's a swatch. The Kenosee tank is a design I released a couple years ago. This is the blocked swatch. You can see a little bit better what it looks like. And ever since I released that design, I've dreamt about doing it as a t-shirt. So that's what I'm doing here. It's worked from the top down in pieces, and then you join to work in the round and continue the body straight down, and then the sleeves will be picked up and worked with short rows to add some length at the top, and then they will be, I'm imagining a fuller sleeve, one that's not exactly ruffled but kind of flowy, and the t-shirt will also have more positive ease. The tank top was recommended with negative ease so that it stays tight on your chest and doesn't flop around, because when you don't have sleeves you tend to not have as much structure holding it to your body. So the Kenosee tee I'm designing with 0 positive ease at the bust, and then it will increase to an A-line shape towards the waist. So the waist will have a lot of positive ease, but the bust will have none. So I'm using a different yarn. The Kenosee tank was done with Garn Coast, which is a lace weight, light fingering weight yarn made of wool and cotton, and I held that double and got a gauge of 19.5 stitches. So for this one I don't have readily access to Garn Coast, so I went to my local yarn store and picked up one of their summer yarns. This is called Concept by Katia, Dama, and it's color 89, and it's cotton, viscose, and silk, and it's this beautiful navy. Someone posted a Kenosee tank on Ravelry done in a dark navy like this, and it's just gorgeous. It shows the lace really well, especially with a light skin tone underneath, and so yeah, I took inspiration from that when I chose this color. I have 9 balls of that yarn, and it is 50 grams and 142 yards. So they are $11 at Statement Junkie, so 9 of them, it wasn't 9, it was 8. 8 of them was around $90. And I probably will not even use 2/3 of that. Now that I've started, I realize that I probably bought way too much yarn. So I've already done 2 front straps and joined and worked the front, and I've done 2 back straps, and I've only used 1 ball. So yeah, it probably will only use four balls. I'm using 3.25 millimeter needles, and the gauge is 20 stitches per inch. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. So some shop news. The Brooklyn Tweed Circular Yoke sweater that I showed you last episode has gone into testing. I still have the test call open for some certain number of sizes, mostly the larger end of the size range. So if you're interested in that, it will stay open until Monday, June. What day is that? What day is today? Is it June 13th? Whatever the Monday is after June 13th. It will stay open until that evening. And yeah, it's a really good group of knitters so far, and I'm not being super picky about who's getting selected, so I have up to 6 testers per size for some of the sizes. So yeah, there's lots of room there if you're interested. And then the Pure Tea should be coming in to test knitting fairly soon. I released the Vintage Vibe vest this month. Thank you so much for your love and support for that pattern. I was really happy with how it did. And in July, the Seed Star blanket and hap will be coming out. So this one was a collaboration with the fiber company. They provided the yarn, which is Meadow. It's a lace weight yarn with linen, alpaca, a few different kinds of fibers. It blocks out really nicely. So testing is done. My testers have finished. It's worked from the center out, but not with so the Musselburgh hat is worked from the top down, from the center out, but it is worked with a magic circle cast on, and then you have to try and work this super tiny diameter of stitches before it's like a more comfortable size to knit. I don't love that. I understand the point in a hat where you really want a crisp line and you don't want your cast on obvious. But for a blanket, I figured I could do that in a different way that wasn't so fiddly. So it starts with a mitered square, and then you pick up around the edges, and then you increase in pattern to the final size. So it's a very big shawl, completely square, or it's a small blanket, like maybe for a baby blanket or something. So yeah, you could continue in pattern if you had more yarn and work it larger. It could be a king size blanket if you had enough yarn and enough time to keep knitting it. I used 4 balls of Meadow for this project, and yeah, it was gifted to me by the fiber company, so I didn't have to purchase that myself. And it's really enjoyable background project. I wouldn't want it to be my monogamous project, but if you are going on a road trip and you need something that's repetitive and big so that you don't run out of knitting, this would be a good one. And yeah, so it's coming out July 11th, and it will be on discount when it's released, so watch for that. I don't have a lot of acquisitions this week, but I did want to share one with you. I like to use Routine antiperspirant. Oops. It is a small business in Calgary, Alberta, and it has natural ingredients and it really works. So as you know, if you've been watching this podcast, I have very sensitive skin and I have to be very careful about perfumes and dyes, and a lot of skin products I can't use because I will react to them. So I was reading the ingredients of all of their variety of scents, and this one seemed, I liked the scent the best, and it seemed like my skin would be able to handle it. It's called Sweet Jane, and I wanted to share it with you all because I didn't buy it based on this, but it says Sweet Jane. So it has a little writing, a little blurb about each of the scents, each of their flavors, and it says Sweet Jane. Vanilla and pear are sweet, but you, my dear, are tough. Writing poems and knitting sweaters, motorbiking and stuff. So I just can't escape knitting, even in my deodorant. I really recommend this stuff. Like, I have used it on and off for the past 7 years, and it works better than, it's aluminum free, and it works better than the stuff with aluminum in it. And so this time I even convinced Brent, my husband, to give it a try, and he just can't get over how it really works. The only downside is that you have to use your fingers to apply it. So you have to get your fingers into your armpits. But I mean, if you can get over that, it's really, really great stuff. It has coconut oil, baking soda, arrowroot, whole bunch of butters like shea butter. It has yeah, and then it just has essential oils, or if you get one of the other kind, like this more sensitive skin kinds, they don't use oils or essential oils or perfumes at all. So I thought I would share that. My spring plans and dreams coming up. I have the Bluebird banding to finish up. So far I've banded just 3 of the nests, and I've put little metal tags, little rings on 14 baby bluebirds. I need to get 3 more done, hopefully 1 this Saturday. I only have 7 nests this year, so that's not a great number for my route. Some years it's quite a bit more than that, more than double that, but it does seem to just ebb and flow. So some years will be really good for them and other years not so much. Okay, so now we get on to farm news. It's been a month. It's been a real month. So we've had some real ups, we've had some real downs, and yeah, I will share some of that with you. So this will kind of bleed into the Spin Me a Yarn segment, because there's quite a few stories here. So at the start of the month, not the start of the month, at the middle of May, we went to Rosebud Fiber Mill, my husband and I, and we took the fleece that we had shorn from our sheep last year and the fleeces from this year, and we took it down to Alex at Rosebud Fiber Mills, which is a small Alberta woolen mill. Actually, she does worsted woolen spun, so it's kind of a mix of both, which I really like the yarn that she produces. So we were able to leave my kids with my parents, and so we had a little road trip all by ourselves, which is always so much fun. And Rosebud is just south of Drumheller, which is just a really neat area of the province. And we went out for supper and stayed at a hotel, and then went to Rosebud the next day, which is really cute town. I really recommend checking out Rosebud if you're ever in that area. It's kind of down in a coulee and it's super cute little buildings. Seems to have a lot of community and culture there. So, and we met Alex and got a tour of her mill, and I had my yarn separated into sort of different shades. So there should be a dark one, a medium gray, and a light colored yarn that comes out of it. So yeah, Alex has a lot of fleeces because there's so few mills that do custom spinning, like small batch spinning, and create a specific yarn if you want that. So she's quite busy, I guess, and generally in Canada you need to wait a year to a year and a half to have your yarn from washing to spinning. So it will be a while till that is a usable yarn. So I had 38 pounds of fleece that I delivered, and if it's all usable, which you don't really know until the spinning stage, because it might be too long, or yeah, there might be other faults in it. If it's all usable, then you lose about 40%, I think she said, in waste. So then that would be like 25 to 30 pounds of finished yarn. And if you think about a finished skein of yarn being 100 grams, and a pound is about around 500 grams. So then you're getting 5 times 30, which is 150 skeins of yarn. So that's a lot of yarn. Yeah, I should be able to share some of it with you at the finished stage. Obviously I want to keep some for myself, and I want to give some away to knitting friends, but then I should be able to market and sell it. It's pure Shetland wool, and yeah, you'd know exactly where it came from and how far it has traveled in its life, which is basically to Rosebud, Alberta and back. That's it. So that's exciting and that's fun. So on our way, on the one night that we stayed in Drumheller, it actually rained here. So it's currently raining right now, but that was the last time it's rained, was around 3 weeks ago. And it rained a lot at my house. It was very spotty because it rained at my house, but the town that you can see from my house got no rain. But we got a ton of rain, and which was great news, very exciting. So we got home the day after it had rained. I actually didn't even go home. We went to my son's track and field meet, which was about 45 minutes from our house, and then my husband and my son just dropped me off in the town that I work at the yoga studio. We had left my van there, and so I went straight to work, and I didn't get home until 8:15 or 8:30 or so. And then I come home and I feed the animals and I eat my supper, and then I go to bed. So the next morning, my mom, who lives next door, had been out checking her chickens, and she came up to my house and she said, "I think you, who was pregnant, is in labor." And so I run around like a chicken with my head cut off. She was due, we didn't really know exactly when she was due, but maybe a week from then, so it would have been really early. So I run out there, and she was not in labor. She actually was dying of bloat. So that rain that we had had made all the grasses and the forbs in the pasture shoot right up. And then I was not home to keep them in, but even if I had been, I probably wouldn't have thought to keep them in. I'm very careful about bloat at the start of the year when they're going from hay to green pasture, but I wouldn't have thought about the risk when it rains heavily after a drought. We don't have droughts in spring. That just doesn't happen here. So this year we did, and I just didn't, the thought didn't even cross my mind. So yeah, drought is a horrible way for an animal to die. My mom and my dad and I all tried everything we could. The nearest vet to us is an 1.5-hour drive away. So she would not have made the drive if we had loaded her up and taken her to the vet. Plus, the vet is dealing with other people's emergencies, so you don't know when he would have been able to get to see her. 75% of animals, of sheep who were at the stage she was at, die when they have bloat like that. So she was expecting twins, or we don't know what she was expecting, but we know she was pregnant because her udder was blooming. So the vet, we did call the vet. I called the vet and asked what I should try, and we did everything he recommended. I called a couple friends of mine who have sheep nearby and asked them their advice. They had never had bloat, but they told me what they knew, and one of them's father-in-law had bloat in cows, so we did the things that they suggested. But yeah, she died in a horrible way, and her baby's with her. So that was quite awful, and we were supposed to pick up sheep that following weekend from someone near Drayton Valley, some more Shetlands, and I just couldn't bring myself to get more sheep after that. Anyway, I thought I was at the point I could talk about it, but okay, I think I can get through it now. So the hardest part about that is that when you have 4 children who are still dependent on you, they do not become less needy just because you're going through an emergency. So you still have to be there to wipe a bum or catch a bloody nose or walk somebody to the bus. And so it was just, I just think that I'm not at the stage of life where I can take on much more than I'm taking on. So after that, 2 weeks later, our other ewe, so we only had 2 ewes that were of age to be pregnant. So they both were. One we knew was because of an ultrasound she had done. The other one was not ultrasounded, but with her udder blooming, we knew she was pregnant too. So Bess was the one who died, and then Dee Dee was the one who was pregnant with twins at one point. And then 2 weeks after Bess died, I noticed some really nasty stuff coming out of Dee Dee's rear end. So we separated her and were able to take her to the vet, and the vet, yeah, well, I knew before we took her to the vet that she had aborted her pregnancy, and yeah, the vet said she was actually looking really good and really clean inside, but yeah, no longer pregnant. So that was another heartbreak. In some ways, I'm glad that that happened, especially because Dee Dee is healthy and has no ill effects from that. I would have really, I was really worried about her going into labor and then something going wrong and her ending up dead or having these babies who were alive and then they die because of me missing something or doing something wrong. So in some ways I'm kind of glad that I don't have to deal with lambing after Bess's death, but it is sad that we were expecting lambs this year and now we have none. So going forward, I think I will no longer breed my sheep. I will just try and find lambs and buy them and grow them, my flock, that way. It was pretty horrific, so I don't want to go through that again, especially when my kids are little and they're still such a priority. So yeah, that's where we're at. We were supposed to get more sheep this weekend, actually, from that shepherd in Drayton Valley, but crazy enough, her sheep got into her grain stores and 4 of them have died and a whole bunch more are sick. So we're not going to pick them up this weekend and we'll just end up seeing what's happening. But yeah, sheep are so great most of the time. 90% of the time they're no trouble, and then that 10% of the time can really take you down. So I really feel for that shepherd and what she's going through right now. It's pretty horrible, and I can't imagine going through it 3 more times. And it's still not clear whether the ones that are left are going to make it or not. So yeah, there was a lot of downs. There's other things that other tough stuff that we've dealt with this month, but not farm related. But then there's also been like a lot of amazing, happy times that you just are so grateful that you have this life. So the bluebirds are always a really special experience, and all the birds that have come back and they've built their nest. There's 3 robin's nests that have all been successful, and there's a eastern phoebe nest, and yeah, just everything that comes with spring. So we also got a couple pigs. They're super cute, and we've got our meat chickens. So 30 chicks are growing in our garage now. So and our garden is doing really well considering the drought. So there's just a lot of really high ups and the really low downs. So I kind of feel a little manic, but we're getting through. And this rain is just such a blessing. I can't tell you how grateful we are for this rain. Okay, and one more story. So we have a cat. Her name is Cookie. We got her when we first moved out to the country 3.5 years ago as a kitten. And she's a garage cat because that's where we need mice control. And my son is also very allergic to cats, so he can't live with a cat inside. So she's a very good kitty. And we said that we would let her have one litter of kittens before we spayed her. So it's been 3.5 years, and every 2 weeks in the summer she goes into heat calling for a boyfriend to come, and nothing. No tomcats, no wild cats anywhere, and we have yet to have a litter of kittens. So every once in a while we try and feel out if someone would lend us their male cat so we can get her pregnant, and nothing's ever worked out until this year. We have friends in the town nearby that have an unneutered male cat, and they said that we could keep him indefinitely. So wouldn't you know it, the same week that we're supposed to get this cat from friends, a feral tomcat shows up. So the cat that we're borrowing, it hasn't arrived yet. And this feral cat shows up in our backyard. And at first Cookie was not into him, but then she was. And we think that something has happened between them. But in the meantime, we have this other cat, Finn, his name is. They're both orange. So that that day that the feral cat showed up, I was like to my friend, "Did you drop off your cat?" Because we have a male orange cat here, and that's what yours is. And she was like, "No." So the same week we have 2 ginger male cats show up. Anyway, our friend's cat is just young. He's 8 months or so, and Cookie hates him with all her guts. She cannot stand him. She doesn't let him near her at all. So we've had him for about a week and a half, and yeah, there's no babies come from that guy, but maybe there's babies coming from this feral cat. But that's pretty ironic that we can't find a male cat to save our lives, and then we end up with 2 in the same week. So hopefully her pregnancy goes better than the other pregnancies around here. I just had a few thoughts about our experiences this month, and what makes a success versus a failure. And I've always thought that success had to do with your intelligence or your skill level or your experience, or your knowledge. But I've been realizing while learning along the way of owning livestock and being a country dweller that you can have all those things and you can still be a failure. What makes your success is that you have systems in place based on those things. So maybe if you are failing, you feel like you're failing in a certain aspect of your life. Maybe you're not missing knowledge, experience, or skill set, or intelligence in order to learn all those things. Maybe you're missing the system that works. And once you have a system in place, you can use all those traits to your best advantage. So I knew about bloat. I knew to keep my sheep in. I just didn't have a system that I use routinely to prevent that. And I knew the steps to do to save Bess's life if that was possible, but I didn't have a working system where I did step 1, step 2, step 3, and how long to do those steps, etc. So maybe we, instead of taking it on ourselves that we are failing, we just need to realize that our systems are failing. Yeah, that's all I have to share today. Feels like it was a bit of a downer. Maybe it's the weather too. We're in a low pressure system. Everything feels slow and quiet and a little bit lower than my normal energy level, but I hope that you are all well and that you are finding joys in amongst the ups and downs of your life. And yeah, take care. Till next time.